My name is DJ Swivel, and on this episode of Just the Tips, we're going to be talking about session organization and mix templates. I know it's not always the most fun topic, but it's really important so you can get started on your mixes quickly, and I'm going to be giving you guys access to my own mix templates. Stay tuned. All right, so like I said, today on Just the Tips, we're going to be talking about session organization and templates. I use templates a lot when I'm getting started with a mix. There's a lot of plugins that I like to use, my sends, my buses, my reverbs, delays, my master fader settings. A lot of this stuff are things that I reuse and will adjust for each song individually, but a lot of the plugins that I like to be there. So I thought I would go through my session template, show you how quickly I get my sessions ready to mix, and also make these templates available to you guys if you'd like them, so you can hopefully find some organization in your own sessions. So I typically work in Pro Tools, so we're in Pro Tools, but I have to say this applies to all DAWs. Each DAW has their own specifics, but with respect to this, it's not about any Pro Tools specifics or Logic specifics or Ableton specifics or FL specifics. It's really just about the general organization, and you guys, if you're in a different DAW, you'll find how that organization works within that DAW. And I'm going to make my templates available across all those 4 DAWs I just mentioned. So here we go. Before I get into actually opening a session or importing files into this session, I'm just going to go through all aspects of the template and show you why I do things the way that I do them. So let's start here at the top with this demo track. This demo track is what I use for typically when I get a mix, the recording engineer or the producers, their own internal demo. I like to be sent that just so I can hear kind of the vision that they were going for, what the angle was, and then from that, I will start to improve on it and when I start mixing my record. Now, aside from just mixing, a lot of times, even when I'm mixing, I might record some background vocals, or if I'm in a writing session, I'll have writers come in, or I'll be writing myself. And so I always like to have a record track just in case. So this next track is a record track, and it's just got a simple auto-tune on it, and a simple reverb and delay send, which I will get to later. All of these sends here, if you're not familiar with Pro Tools, these are your sends. So I'm basically sending audio from this record track to this bus, which is a reverb, and I'll just quickly show all of my sends, the global effects that I like to use across all tracks. I save they're sort of at the bottom of the session below the master fader, so I can quickly get to them. So in this case, we're sending to a reverb over here, a reverb, and I've got all of my sends named. So you'll see every single thing that I ever need in a session is named and ready to go. And these orange ones are the ones that I'm currently using, and these are ones that I sometimes use depending on the song. So in this case, we're sending to a reverb. A reverb is a Valhalla vintage verb. We'll get through all that later in this quick little lesson. So that's a record track, and just something I'll record on. And then the rest of the session is what I use for a mix. Now, every song is different. So this is just a starting template. Sometimes I'll recreate certain tracks. So this track I might duplicate 3 times if the session I receive has more than one lead vocal track. But I'll show you why I do it this way. So on lead 1, these sort of first 4 tracks are my 4 different lead vocal tracks that I would typically use. I have 3 different tracks that are really meant for singers, and 1 that is meant for a rap vocal part. They're all a little bit different, and usually when I get vocals, I'll try just when I have a dry vocal, I'll put it on all 4 different tracks, and I'll just see which one sounds the best, and then I'll start there and then tweak from that point. So on lead 1, we start with auto-tune. If you don't need it, it's as simple as making it inactive, not a big deal. I start with a de-esser, and then I have a channel strip, here, which has, some high pass filter, a little bit of EQ, and some compression. And then I also have a second compressor behind it. And then on this particular track, I have this SPL Vitalizer, which is sort of a bit of an exciter. It just adds a little high frequency upper harmonic texture and increases that a little bit. And so I like it sometimes on lead vocals. On this next lead vocal track, start with autotune. We're in the era of autotune. It's been that way for at least 10 years, 15 years, I'd say. So an autotune, again, a de-esser. This is a different de-esser. This is a really good one from Eosis, and you can get it in the Slate bundle. And this is my VMR from Slate. And I have my own presets, so we're starting on vocals, really good lead, which is a vocal preset that I've created. And it's got a bit of like a pre here, which adds a little bit of saturation, kind of just a little bit of grit, an EQ, 2 compressors, and again, some high frequency saturation up here, just a little high frequency boost. This is the silk setting on the the high lift, one of Steven Slate's plugins within VMR. So that's the second lead vocal track, and the third one is using just stock plugins. So when I make these templates available, if you don't have these plugins, you have an equivalent version with the things that just come in Pro Tools, and of course we'll recreate that for Logic and Ableton and FL Studio as well, as best we can. It doesn't actually matter about all the settings. So here we're using, again, a de-esser, a channel strip similar to, this VMR, and then another second compressor, which is very light, just kissing the vocal usually. And again, every song is different. I don't just set it and forget it. I load up the sounds that I need, and then I start dialing in. But all the plugins are there, so I don't have to hunt for anything, and I can get straight to mixing. Okay. And then on this rap vocal, similar, an RDSer, a Waves SSL channel, and an RVox. The difference, though, is in your sends. So on this rap, I have this D reverb is a room, this B reverb is a plate, this A reverb is a large hall, and this C reverb here is like kind of a sizzly high frequency one. So they're all set up a little bit differently, and you'll see when I pull in vocals, I'll like experiment. I'll see what it sounds best on, and then I'll work off of that, and I'll start tweaking from there. Okay, so next, I have some buses, and these are for background vocals typically. So sometimes in a pop song, in your hook bus, let's say, you might have a stack of 10 vocals or 8 vocals or 4 vocals or more maybe. So I have 12 vocal tracks here. They're all panned in ways that I like. I don't usually pan everything 100, 100, so I'll spread it around. So this is 100, 100. This would be a left and a right here. This would be a left and a right. They're panned at 80. This would be a left and a right. They're panned at 60, and then 100, and then 50, and then 75. And the reason for that is that you can spread the vocals across the spectrum. So you kind of, not everything is occupying the hard left and right. And if you want to spread them later, you can. So now this bus, all of these hook tracks, for those of you who are kind of new to production and engineering, this bus is essentially whatever effects that I have on this bus are being affected across all 12 of these tracks. And if you see, the output of these tracks is running through a bus, the hook bus, and the input of this track is set to a hook bus. Now, every DAW does this a little bit differently. This is how Pro Tools does it. If you're familiar with your DAW, you'll know exactly how it works in yours. I have 3 buses that I usually start with. And again, similar to these 3 lead vocal tracks, each one of them uses a different set of plugins because I want to test out what it sounds best on just naturally. Everybody's voice is different, so we want to just try it out and see what gets us closest there. So again, I'll run through this quickly. This is very similar to that lead 1 track. I actually have a second de-esser on it, which I often do because sometimes going through the process of EQing, you'll add brightness. When you compress, you'll add a little more brightness. And here I've got this like high frequency, it boosts the high frequency stuff. So sometimes I'll have to do an additional set of de-essing. Usually it's a lot less than the first de-esser. So the first de-esser is corrective. Then we start adding stuff, and then we correct one last time, just in case any little one-offs throughout the vocal performance like pop out and it's a little too sibilant. So we add that there. On this background vocal A bus, same as that lead 2, and I'll put a really good lead on it. And then background vocal B, this is again all stock plugins. So this all comes with Pro Tools, and in this case I actually have 2 de-essers, and the reason for that is the first de-esser is doing that very high frequency, like above 10K. The second one is actually de-essing 2,500 hertz. So the reason I do that is this is a frequency that is very typical in vocals to have this like upper mid-range irritating tone that actually fatigues your ears. And so often I will have one bus that has that on it just to test out and see if I need to address some issues in that upper mid, that 2.5 to 3.5K frequency range. I have it there, and it's quick to just move up and move around. So anyways, moving on, we'll scroll down. So I have my master fader, which I'll get to in a second, and then I have all of my send effects. So let me just quickly run through the send effects that I have. And in the template, you'll notice on in Pro Tools, you have 10 inserts. So you have 5 and 5, and you can actually have up to 10 plugins on any track at one time. I've done it this way because all of these inserts that are inactive here, these are all stock plugins. So if you get this template and you don't have Valhalla Vintage Verb, for example, you can simply, well, it won't show up. So it'll automatically be inactive, and you can just make the D-verb active. And I've tried my best to match the sounds. They're not going to be perfectly matched, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because I change this in every song anyways. It's never just left. I always adjust depending on who the vocalist is and really what the song is, what the song needs. Okay? So so let's just leave my plugins up for now. So on the A reverb, this is like kind of a large hall. It's a concert hall. It's got a long decay time. It's a warm reverb. On the B reverb, I have a plate. So it's a little brighter, a little shorter on the decay time. On the C reverb, I'm using Verb Suite Classics. This is a plugin from Stephen Slate. It's in his All Access Pass. And this is sort of like the anomaly effect that I use. And I'm using a setting called Silica Beads. It's in Wild Spaces, and it's part of the Lexicon 480. It sort of mimics the 480 sounds. And Silica Beads was a setting that I would always use, and it's a very, very high frequency sibilant reverb, and it's just to add a little bit of like sizzle to a vocal performance. I don't use it in a large amount. I just kind of put a very soft amount of it on there, and it just adds this nice shine to the reverb. So that's my C reverb, and the D reverb is I'm actually using the sauce. And you'll see I have on the smoke setting, this is our reverb setting. This is a small room, and we modeled an incredible sounding reverb for this, and it sounds perfect. And so it's just set to 100%. And I actually have a little bit of saturation there because sometimes I want my reverb to have a little bit of grit. But if you like it perfectly clear and smooth, you can just like move that down to 0, and then it's off. And then we're just using this as a reverb. So that is the 4 reverbs I typically use. Now we get into delays. So I usually have a medium delay. In this case, I'm using H delay, and it's set to a ping pong. But again, you can just adjust depending on the song, and lo-fi is on. And there's a bit of a high pass. So none of the low frequencies are there. It's just high frequencies. And then I add a doubler, also by Waves. And this is meant to just sort of like spread that that delay out a little bit, and it almost acts like a bit of a chorus. So I just like the texture that it adds. And I do this a lot. So the medium delay, so this was an eighth note delay. The long delay is a quarter note, and I have a doubler on that as well. And that is actually then the delay is being sent to a reverb, which is going up here. So basically a little bit of that delay, just so it's not perfectly dry, gets sent up to Valhalla Vintage Verb. So that's what that is for. But you know, if you want it dry, you just turn it off. It's that easy. Then the next two delays are what I use for what I call throws. A lot of people call throws. And these are delays that I typically don't leave on a performance. They are there just for, let's say, the end of a line. And we'll sort of explore what that looks like in a little bit. Yeah, this is an H delay. It's an eighth note, and there's a doubler on it as well. But sometimes I'll do some weird stuff on these tracks. For example, on throw 2, I'm using the sauce, and you know, I'm pitching this delay up a full octave. I'm formant shifting it down. There's a little bit of spread. I have a large hall reverb, and of course it is a delay. The mix on the delay is set to 100, and it's a quarter note. So this will give you a really unique sounding delay, which I like to use in my production and mixes. And then finally, we have a slap delay. This kind of adds a little width on a vocal, and a doubler. And these are very similar, except the delay times are different. So this slap delay, you know, 65 milliseconds on the left, 57 on the right. So it gives you a nice stereo effect. And the doubler is much shorter. So you're not going to get quite as much stereo effect from it. But you know, it's just, it's actually one of the presets. And, you know, it's 20.3 milliseconds on the right side and 7.3 milliseconds on the left side. And there's a little bit of brightness at, you know, 3K and above. There's a shelf EQ on it. So that is pretty much the whole session template, except for the master fader, which is the last thing, because this is usually the last thing I touch in a mix. So I am using, this is my typical mastering chain. I'm using a Slate FGX. This is essentially a bus compressor, but it also has like some transient modulation stuff going on it, which I really like. Then I go through an Ozone, and in this case I'm using Ozone 8. And we start with some multi-band dynamics, just sort of kissing the bands a little bit and doing some general boosting and cutting. Then I have some multi-band imaging, a little bit of tape saturation, and the spectral shaper just like tames some of the really like below 40 hertz low end, because sometimes that doesn't translate to all speakers. And then I have a bit of a post EQ. Again, we're taking out some of the really, really low end that's just going to rumble and make noise and take up space that you're not really going to hear. There's a bit of a boost around, let's see, this is 117 hertz, so that's adding some punch in your drums. We're cutting out a little bit of those boxy frequencies, which is usually around 500 hertz, in this case 469. And then there's a really, really slight boost, really wide boost at 10K, less than half a decibel. And that's it. Now, again, this is not sort of set it and forget it. I adjust this depending on the song, but this is usually a good starting point that I like. Now, again, if you don't have any of those plugins, you can make them inactive, and I've recreated essentially as close to that chain as I could with stock plugins. So we have an Impact. This is by AVID. Comes with Pro Tools. And this is just your, you know, your typical bus compressor. Then we have Pro Multiband Dynamics. This is essentially your multiband compressor. Then we have a little bit of an EQ. I've matched the EQ curve identical. And then finally we have Maxim, which is our limiter. So that is sort of our setup. And again, on the, you know, I have a FabFilter Pro L is the limiter that I use. And basically you'll use this, you'll adjust it depending on how loud you mixed. And you want to make sure that you're getting a decent amount of compression, but not so much that you're distorting the record. So that is my mix template. And now I think what makes the most sense is for me to import stems from a mix and show you exactly and how I would set up a session and how quickly I can get set up. So in this case, we're just going to go File, we're going to import session data, and I've sort of prepared this. And I'm just going to import everything because this is all the audio for the session that I need. So I'm going to import, and it's just going to load it right at the top of the session, right? Okay. So it's going to take a second to copy everything over because it's importing that audio. And once we're good, everything's imported. Very nice. Okay. So the first thing is, I have a demo track. So I guess usually the first thing I would do in a mix is I would figure out the tempo. And in this case, we can do a quick listen. Let's listen to the drums. Usually they're transient, so it's easier to figure out a tempo with drums. So that right there is 2 bars. So we will set that as bar 1 and bar 3. So this is 84 beats per minute. So I'll sort of undo that and I'll just set 84 beats per minute. And we will make sure that we are in shuffle, and we'll make sure that this all loads up exactly at bar 1, beat 1. So we will delete that and you'll see everything move back. And now this should all be on the grid. Yep, looks like it's right on the grid here. So that's 1 bar. And it loops perfectly. All right, so now that we've got the tempo, because that's really important, here's the demo. This is the actual song. And so I've imported the demo track, but and I'm using output 3 and 4 here. That's just my particular setup. But you could just take the demo and put it on this demo track. And usually I just use that to listen, but that track will typically be muted for the whole session. Okay, so now we have all the drums, bass, the main instrument, which is a guitar, and then the additional instruments here, electric guitar, there's some strings, and then some synths. I like to organize my session with all of the music stuff first. And the reason why I don't have any tracks set up in my template for music is that every song is produced so differently, it would make no sense to try to anticipate what you're going to receive or what you're going to create. So I usually just import stems and keep it easy, and these are in the exact order I want. Kick drum, snare drum, clap, a loop, then we get into cymbals, hi-hats, crashes, things like that, and then sound effects like risers and impacts and that. Then I have my bass track here, and then of course the main instruments, and then the sort of supporting instruments. Then after all of that, we get to the vocals, all right? So since I've already organized all of the beat stems to be in the order that I want, now we just need to organize the vocals. So let's start by moving all of these background vocals, right, into one of the background tracks. So let's like move it into this hook bus, and I could either copy and paste this onto my tracks, but in this case, I've already sort of panned them the way that I want. But actually, for argument's sake, let's just say I don't keep their tracks. I also did it because I imported the auto-tune settings. But let's just copy this over. So let's copy this down, or cut and paste rather, and we're just going to paste it down here. So I'm using 9 of the 12 tracks. So I can delete these 3 here, keep everything very organized. And I'll just copy these auto-tunes down. And I would imagine they're all the same, but just in case they're not, I'll just go track by track in order. Pull that one down, pull that one down, and 3 more, and we're good to go. 1. Okay, perfect. So now we actually don't need these. Delete. And the beauty of this is all the panning is already done, and it's running through a bus that already has some reverb and delay. So very quickly, when I listen to this, these vocals are going to sound pretty decent, at least to start. So let's hear.
I don't know what is real, what is fake. You are my lifeline, every mistake. Save me.
That sounds really good. And again, this is my default template. I'm sure I would go in and make adjustments to everything a little bit and get it exactly where I want. But when you listen to these background vocals soloed, they're going to sound pretty nice. They're going to be spread out wide. The panning's all done. You have your effects. You have a little bit of compression and EQ. It's good to go. You save me. Got some nice delay. We've set our tempo so the delay is in time. Now, if I take everything off this, it's not going to sound quite as good. You save me. So that's why I like to have these sort of presets and things there, because I can get really quickly to a sound that I like and then start tweaking. Okay, so now let's look at the lead vocals. So we have 3 lead vocal tracks here. We have a singing vocal, we have a rap vocal, and we have, a female singing vocal, a male rap vocal, and then a male singing vocal. So 3 different tones, 3 different voices, and we want to make sure we can get set up here pretty quickly. So I'm just going to take this lead vocal track, we'll copy the auto-tunes down, and let's put trips will go on the rap track. And Joey here will, let's try the default track. And so we may use this, we'll see. I'm kind of just doing all this on the fly. So let's move that one there. This is a rap track, so we're going to move that down to the rap vocal. And this is a male singing track, so let's move that down to lead 3. And let's just see how it sounds. I don't know. This is the first time I'm doing this, so we'll just see. First, let's hear what this lead vocal sounds like by itself.
I've been reaching out for the ones I love. Sometimes living is scary and times are rough.
Okay, cool. Sounds like a great vocal. All right, now let's see what it sounds like with all our effects on it.
I've been reaching out for the ones I love. Sometimes living is scary and times are rough.
Sounds good. Let's hear how it sounds in the track now.
Reaching out for the ones I love. Sometimes living is scary and times are rough.
Okay, so I think the reverb is a little too large on this. Let's try moving this vocal down to this other, different processing that I have. It's got a smaller reverb on it. We'll pull that down a little bit, and let's just see how that feels.
I've been reaching out for the ones I love. Sometimes living is scary and times are rough.
So right away, I like that a lot better. That sounds much more clear. These plugins that I'm using seem to work better on her voice. So I think that's a good starting point. And I like the reverb setting that I have on this. So I actually don't like this one at all for her. So let's just jump forward and listen to the rap vocal.
I was off the deep end with no hope left. You saw me at my weakest, still gave me your best. Let go of all your demons and slay them to rest. You gave my life a meaning I'll never forget. I feel you in my dreams speaking to me in code. Connected through the pain, love lives in the soul. You made me want change, give my life a new road. You always seem to save me right before I let go.
So with a couple little tweaks there, as I was listening, I got it much closer to where I wanted. And it feels great. So there we go. And then same thing, the same thing would apply on this final vocal here. So
I need some balance with you. I found it. If there's something wrong with me, you still see what I can't see. I need some balance with you. I found it. If there's something wrong with me, you still see what I can't see.
So the de-essing was a little much. We turn that down. Let's see what the EQ and compression.
I need some balance. balance with you. I found it. If there's something wrong with me, you still see what I can't see. I need some balance with you. I found it. If there's something wrong with me, you still see what I can't see. Yeah, yeah. I need some balance.
So this second compressor was doing a little too much, so we just raised the threshold on it.
I need some balance with you. I found it. If there's something.
And that sounds a lot better. And now I can really sit down and start digging into the mix and getting all the little details right. And that's it. I mean, I've, pretty much spent, 5, maybe 10 minutes here at most, and the session's ready to go. And I can sit and mix this, and I can probably get this done in a couple hours. So that is kind of how I like to work. And the idea is just to keep you focused on the creative and not worried so much about, finding the plugins you need and wasting time doing things that you can sort of plan for ahead of time. So yeah, that is my session template. I'll make this available on djswivel.com. Go check it out. And hopefully these things will be useful to you when you're setting up your own session, because, nobody wants to waste time, struggling to find a plugin or find the right thing. If you have things that you like to work with, you can also just substitute my plugins out or the stock plugins out for the things that you like, and make it really easy. So when you load up a session, you pull in your template, you're ready to mix, or you're ready to record or produce like right away. So that's this episode of Just the Tips, and we'll be back every other week. So see you in 2 Fridays.